What is up, everyone? We are back with the Bouncing Back podcast. We got a great show lined up for you this week. We got a lot of awesome topics to talk through. We're excited to jump in with you all. So I am one of your co-hosts, Wes McKnight, and I am joined here with the one and the only Jack Blackwell. How you doing today, buddy?
Hey,
Oh,
I'm
I just called you buddy. I'm sorry.
yeah, dude. You should know better. Ever since the early days of West Virginia, I made it very clear I didn't want to be called buddy. So
Do we
let's keep
got? Do
that.
we want to redo this?
No, no, no.
All right,
Go
we're
ahead with
rolling
it.
with it.
No, I mean it's something that people should know. And you know what? Now's a great time, to use this platform to educate people. Okay, so I want to be very clear with you guys. All right, the term buddy is not endearing. Okay, there's nothing nice about it. You say buddy to people that you look down to, literally, like physically and metaphorically. So to come in here and just slap Buddy around, like that's just I'm upset with you, Wesley. I expect more from you.
Dude, I,
But
I I tell you what happened real quick. I'm
okay,
distracted by the segment of the show, so we're adding to one of our segments this week. I'm not going to spoil that for the guest yet, but this whole time I'm on my phone trying to get everything set up so we can have a segment that brings something new to the listeners here. And I'm just halfway on my phone, halfway doing the intro, and it just slipped my mind. Didn't think about it, so
yeah,
I apologize. But why don't you go ahead and tell everyone how you're doing this week?
yeah, I'm good. I mean, not so great right now. Just trying to shake that one off. But yeah, I mean, it's been a good time. Nothing too crazy going on. Pretty regular. Getting excited for the whole Halloween weekend. I'm excited too because this is the first time I have a house. So it will be, well, a house in a neighborhood which will have kids who trick or treat. So I'm excited to hand out some candy if I'm home for it. I'm interested to see what that's like. I don't know how I'm gonna love, hearing the doorbell go off a million times, and I'm not excited to hear how my dog Ace reacts to it. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. Hey, so I was thinking about something coming into the show. We were putting it together. So my wife and I this weekend we went to a local farm here. It's called Layman's Farms up in I think it's Bedford, Virginia. We went out there and kind of just enjoyed our day. They got a pumpkin patch, a bunch of fall stuff. This typical stuff girls love this time of year. But they also had a hayride. All right,
Yeah.
so you go out, they take you around the tractor, take you around the farm. Pretty cool. We had a good time. I can't complain at all. Great weekend. Love spending time with my wife. But while I was there, I got to thinking. We talk about bars here and our experience bouncing and different stories like that. Do you remember back in the day, the bar hayride that we used to have with all the bars in Morgantown, and the kind of the time we had there? And if you do, I kind of want to turn it over to you because you're a great storyteller, just to tell the audience a little bit about that experience and kind of what went on there.
Okay, yeah, for sure. A hayride is something kind of all communities in West Virginia kind of go through, whether it's fraternities, sororities, which obviously neither of us were in, but where we fell into it was the bar crowd. The whole nightlife of Morgantown, all the people that worked in the bars, they would set up each year to go on what we called hayride, but basically it was a whole night event where we would go out to one of these what are haunted forests or whatever you want to call them, and they'd set up a couple tents for us and we'd all go have a good time. And I'll tell you something, you know being at West Virginia, there was kind of two nights that you just always looked forward to, right? You have St. Patrick's Day, which, you know, I'm excited to hear some of those stories you have from St. Patrick's Day because those are pretty wild days. But also the next being Hayride, because it's just those are two nights that are just unlike any other nights. It's kind of Morgantown 2.0, so to speak. And so, with Hayride, you get the whole bar community together. And what basically the way it worked for me, and I'm assuming it was very similar for you, but you would all meet up earlier in the day because we'd head to Hayride right while it's getting dark. So there's probably 6 or 7. So you'd meet up during the day, hang out, get some drinks, just kind of, get some food. That was important. And then we'd all climb on a bus. It seemed like each bar got their own bus. Did you guys have your own bus with Lux and everything?
Yeah, we had our own bus, but we also paired up across the street with actually no, down the street with Big Times. So it'd
Okay.
be us and
Yep.
Big Times would take a bus down together while we were at
Yeah,
Luck.
and a lot of to be honest, a lot of the bars did that, especially when you got to some of the smaller ones.
Hmm.
We just kind of group them together, which it just made it more fun. So then, we all hop on a bus, and imagine being on a high school bus, on your way home from school, right? Imagine that, and then imagine all those high schoolers are 25 years old, and then imagine that they've all been drinking. And that's how the ride to Hayride was. So that was always a treat in itself, right?
Yeah.
And then, we pull up to Hayride, and it was a circus, so to speak. Each bar would kind of split up and go into their sections, whether they were groups of them or, like Bent's. I forget. We paired up with someone. I know we had Vintage Room, and then I believe we did it with someone else, but it might have even been Joe's, to be honest, but I can't remember for sure. But you go to your own tent, and that's where everyone kind of opens up their backpacks and brings their beers out, and then it's craziness for what the next 2 hours.
Oh,
Blasted music, and what's cool is all the tents that they set up too are set up right next to each other. You know what I mean? So you grab your beers, talk to your people, great music playing. You walk out of the tent, and you walk 10 feet over to the bonfire at the next little tent, or you go inside. It's a whole nother, it's almost like each place was its own little club, so to speak, because it was those smaller tents and everyone was just blasting the music. Like, it was a pretty crazy environment, and a lot of people enjoying themselves, to say the least. So that was always fun. And I mean, I would say that's pretty good start to it, right, Wes?
yeah, yeah. I would say so. A couple things I remember there, and it was right. So this was always on a Sunday night, and which was really cool because working in the bars, that's one thing you kind of missed out. Is usually Thursday through Saturday, you're working. Which I mean, we made good money. It was worth it. It probably kept me out of trouble, to be honest with you. But
Right.
usually you didn't have a whole lot of time, just kind of go out and enjoy yourself. But what was really cool is you take that same group of people that basically was just grinding 3 days a week on the weekends while everyone else was having fun, and you kind of set aside a day for just them. So every bar would head to what was called Freight Farm. So that's where the
That's
location
right.
was of
Freight
it. Yep,
Farm. Yep.
yep, it's up in Pennsylvania. And we would go, and everyone was together. So as Jack was saying, like you had this kind of dead period of a couple hours by the time everyone got up there before you started going into the actual like haunted house hayride type of thing, where you just got to hang out with all these people that don't get the opportunity to do it that often. So it's always a cool experience. And the one thing that sticks out to me that I used to love about hayride when I was working at Lux is you would just walk in, like Jack was saying, you would meet up with your coworkers, you'd hang out a little bit before you headed to or went to the bar that you work at, and then you would go there. And one of the most memorable things that I had is my manager would walk in, or the owner of the bar would walk in, and he would look at us all, and he would just say, "Grab something off the shelf." All right.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
and we would just go, and we're like, I remember the first time I was sitting there, I was like, what the heck do you mean? Just grab something off the shelf. And essentially, it was just an open bar for each person to go grab a bottle of whatever they wanted up at the bar. And I mean, that was cool just to see these guys giving back to us a little bit. And like I said, we made good money, but it was at the same time, we just had long hours and sometimes it wasn't fun. So it was cool to see them like give back to us a little bit and just go and grab whatever we wanted. It didn't matter how much it cost, we could pick that bottle up. So that was always pretty cool. Did you run into that when at Bent Willie's?
Very similar, although it sounds a lot more fun the way you're describing it, because I imagine you just like everybody's had a few beers and walks onto the dance floor in front of the bar, and they're just like, go for it, right? We more so made a list, right? So it's like the day's coming to Hayride. We all got together and we said we want this and this and this. And essentially everyone named the bottle that they want, and then that's what showed up. So
I
it was.
forgot you guys were a little higher class down the
And
road.
I don't know
Sorry
about
about
that.
that.
I don't. I'm not. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm telling you how it was. Okay. And I could tell you for sure. I remember pretty well that every year that I went, I was signing up for a bottle of apple Ciroc. So that was always a good time.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it was a cool experience, and then like I kind of alluded to earlier, from that point you would go on and go on the hayride and the go through the haunted house and stuff like that. But I mean, it was pretty cool. It's one of those things like Jack was saying, you look forward to every year, and it's something that everyone in Morgantown does, or like the frats and stuff. But it was cool that kind of the bars had their own little thing where they could go in
Yeah, and
and
I'll
get.
mention I'll mention one thing that was probably the funniest part of Hayride. So, like I said, the day typically starts pretty early, and you go at it for a while. So a lot of people do start to get tired at the end of the night and whatnot. So if you're able to keep up your energy and focus on everything that's going on, I always thought it was funny that while we're going through the haunted forest and the haunted house and stuff like that. Um, with the group of people that we were around. So, keep in mind, we have a collection of, a bunch of bouncers, a bunch of bartenders, and then managers. That is essentially who was in these groups. And it was always funny because you would have the bouncers who had to prove that they were still tough. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
they'd stand up in front of all the ghosts or people jumping out and say, "I'm not flinching." But then you'd have those the bouncers who are as tough as can be, big as can be, who are hiding behind people. These
Yeah.
250, 300-pound guys not wanting to go first into this dark room. And then on top of that, then you have these little bartenders, who half the time end up trying to protect some of those bigger guys that
Yep.
ended up being scared. So it was always interesting actually going through there and kind of seeing that dynamic of things and how people kind of reacted in an environment outside of work.
Yeah.
And
I
one
tell
that
you,
was a little scary.
yep. I tell you what, it was a lot of fun. It was fun to kind of do something during the Halloween time, which is huge in Morgantown, where everyone's coming down, dressing up, heading down to the bars, just having a good time out. And we didn't get to enjoy that most years because we were actually working at the bar. But some years we did, and that's kind of what I want to talk or roll into now is costumes, man. So you mentioned earlier coming to the show. I don't know if you got anything planned for this year, but back in Morgantown, you had some funny costumes you would dress up as for Halloween. You got anything planned this year at all?
I don't have anything planned this year. I don't know. One, I don't necessarily know what I'm doing yet, even though it's just a few days away, which is funny. But also, I don't even know what I would do depending on whatever situation I'm in. Like, even if I am just home handing out candy, like, do I want to dress up for that? I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, when it comes to Halloween costumes, and this has been true since even when I was younger. I kind of always took a Jim from The Office approach. And if you've seen The Office, by the way, I love The Office. I could watch The Office 24/7, forever. But Jim, his whole gig during Halloween is like he was as basic as can be. Like he did the bare minimum that would get you to say, okay, he did it, but you know, that was it. And that's kind of what I did. So off the top of my head, I remember one year, Amber kind of went, as a mouse, with the little ears and
Yep.
everything. And I remember vividly, and I believe I have pictures of this, and unfortunately, I don't think I can post any of them. Just don't think that's a good idea for myself. But that year, she went as a mouse. I went as essentially cheese. I took a big yellow shirt and I wrote cheese on it. So that was a successful one. And then I had another one that wasn't too bad. Um, oh, I do remember when I was bartending, I used to dress up as Eeyore. Like I went to Walmart one year and found like a supersized onesie of Eeyore, so I used to throw that on, which that wasn't bad. And then one year I was Nick Kelly, who was the owner of Ben's, and that was funny because if you know Nick, he kind of grew his hair out, a little straggly hair. Love you, Nick, but man, it was a mess. And at some point in his life, messed up one of his legs, if not both. I don't know. Guy had a bit of a limp, and drank Rumplemints all the time. It's why I love Rumplemints to this day. You can always find a bottle in my freezer. Thank you, Nick, for that as well. But I went into work one night when yeah. So I was working on Halloween, and I dressed up as Nick, which was always funny, seeing his reaction to it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Good stuff, man. So I personally, I don't have a whole lot of funny costumes. I know my wife has got me to dress up a couple times here in recent years. I think one year I was Santa Claus. Basically had a couple pillows stuffed into my belly, heading
There you
down to the
go.
bar. And I think one year she was an alien, and I just had a NASA shirt on. So kind of taking
Oh.
the same approach as you, just
Oh, that
the
reminds
bare
me.
minimum.
You bring that up. I remember when I was a freshman, uh, I went to a social, and the person I went as like a Coca-Cola bottle. She had like a Coca-Cola dress,
Yep.
and I just wore Jack Daniel's shirt, and it was Jack and Coke, which, double whammy. You could clearly see the effort that was put out there. So that was another
Yeah.
good one. You just brought up the NASA shirt. I remembered that.
Yeah. Good times, good times. So let's go ahead and pivot away a little bit from Halloween and kind of some of the our college days. So most of you guys have been checking out the news this week, have seen this, but something that came through that is just completely wild to me that I think we should talk through is this Alec Baldwin situation where there was a prop gun incident that ended up killing someone. So kind of a little bit of the background. They were on the set of his new movie Rust out in New Mexico. Basically, they went on lunch break before they're shooting this particular scene. They came back. They had a prop gun that they thought was not loaded with anything, and he ended up shooting the actual gun himself, killing his cinematographer, Halian Hutchins, and then I believe
Yeah,
he injured one other person pretty critically. So this
yeah.
is this is a crazy story, Jack. And kind of what are you thinking about it? Where's your head at on this?
No, this was absolutely nuts. I can't imagine being on a movie set. Like I always thought that it was something that was taken with utmost seriousness. I don't know why, but like if you ask me to picture like a movie set, I'm thinking like the director snapping at people. I always thought it was this very tight thing. And hearing this event, I'm not a movie person, right? So I had no idea what Rust was, what that was a thing, a movie that was coming out, before hearing about all this. But it just seems absurd. And I read about it and I thought, wow, that's nuts. So I kind of dug deeper, and I don't know how much of it is true, but reading some of the things I saw, I had saw, first off that there were issues with budgets on the film to begin with. Apparently, a week before, maybe less, the whole camera crew had walked out. Which one thing I had been curious when I heard this, and I'd be interested to try to pull this up here in a minute, see if I can find anything. But I have no idea if that, because it was a videographer, someone holding it was part of the camera crew who passed away, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I'm curious. So was she not there a week before?
Yeah, so I don't know any details on that. I mean, but what's crazy though is I am reading through an article, and I'll go ahead and link this in our show notes from the Los Angeles Times, and it's saying exactly what you're saying, where a lot of crew members walked off previous to this point because of safety concerns. And there's a quote in here that actually says, shoot, where's that? So we now have had 3 accidental discharges. This
Mm-hmm.
is super unsafe from the production manager leading up to this event. So even though it seems like something that was kind of an accident, at the same time, man, I mean, you're putting yourself in these situations over and over again where someone can get hurt. And what I
Well,
found was really interesting is before this show, I did some digging on like what this prop gun was loaded with. So essentially, it was
mhm,
loaded with just a blank, which essentially means those are familiar with the bullet. You have your primer, you have your gunpowder, casing and shell. So both a blank and a live gun would have this, but the difference is it doesn't have the projectile or bullet on the top
right.
of the actual bullet itself. So essentially, you can still do damage with this because it has the gunpowder, has the primer. Like there's something that can projectilely shoot out of this.
Mhm,
And I don't know the exact details on what happened, but supposedly they just thought the gun was not loaded with anything. And
right.
there seems to be it's a huge mishap, and like I don't know how you end up in a situation where you're potentially pointing this at someone, not knowing. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's the question that I had, because I think I probably ended up reading that same article that you said, which is nuts to think about that this had already kind of happened before, obviously not to the degree, or with the outcome that happened when obviously she passed away and everything. But there were issues with the prop gun, and that's not something to mess around with, especially when you're pointing it in the direction of where people will be. I mean, that there's no way that that's something that's taken that lightly. But then, on top of that, just the day of, I don't understand how someone can say, no one knew it was loaded, because how is not loading that gun a big thing? Like, I
Yeah.
feel like that's like you walk into Five Guys and you order food and they yell at what you order. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, how is when a gun gets loaded, it's not yelled to everyone that it's loaded? I don't really understand how that happens. Super unfortunate. Um, you know, barring how terrible this is, I do feel bad for Alec Baldwin, because in no way do I think he had any intentions of harming someone, and so that's so unfortunate to kind of be behind something that took the life of someone. So I do feel sorry for him, but at the same time, how is there not a closer eye on that? And to be honest, I don't know who you blame for this. I don't know anything about how a set works or anything like that. But I feel like it could be a lot of people, and it's just an unfortunate thing.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if we'll ever really know. I mean, I don't think that well, at some point, I think we'll get a little more details on kind of who's the fault here. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Both of us have been around some firearms before in our life, and I mean, you're always taught that whether it's loaded or unloaded, I mean, you always treat it like it's loaded. So anything that's in front of where that barrel's pointing at, you gotta be careful. You gotta pay attention to where it's going. I understand part of the film industry is probably shooting scenes where you're actually like looking like you're shooting at someone and things like this. But I just think you'd have a better understanding and control over what you got going on. I mean, I work at a truck manufacturer, and we go down to just locking out every little piece of equipment if we're potentially around it. So to where you can't swing a boom or can't move a truck or things like that. And
Exactly.
I'm aware of all the safety procedures that go into that and the importance of it. And I couldn't imagine that a lot of these things wouldn't just transition right over to this set, which makes me think that a lot of this probably was not being handled properly to begin with.
Yeah, and whether that was stemming from the low budget thing, or why this was taking so lackadaisical. Hopefully that kind of comes up. And I'd be interested to hear if accidental discharges are something that are kind of common on movie scenes, because that's another thing I never put into perspective. Who knows if this is something that happens kind of, every once in a while, and, people just chalk it up as it is. But if that is the case, I'm surprised there's just not a little um, more
Yeah.
attention to it.
I completely agree. So I did some digging going into the show just to see like has this ever happened before? And did you know that Brandon Lee, which is actually Bruce Lee's son, died from a similar situation with a prop gun, basically not knowing that a dummy round was loaded. And basically he died at 28 in 1993. So
No, I actually didn't know. That's pretty crazy. Um, and you said that was 1983?
1993.
93? Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, but still, that was a long time ago, and so, maybe it kinda calmed down, but that's something that just can't happen.
Yeah, completely agree. I'm sure we'll hear more to come. So, talking about movies, something else that I kind of got into this week was around a Netflix show. Um, have you ever watched the show Clickbait, Jack?
Dude, I'll tell you what, I'm not. So I already said I don't really know movies or the movie scene whatsoever. Pretty much all TV movies. I don't spend much time around, unless there's sports on the channel, of course. But that being said, I have seen clickbait. Netflix is typically where I watch TV if I'm watching TV.
Yep.
And me and my girlfriend are always looking. Me and Amber are always looking for a different series to watch here and there. So I did get the chance to watch Clickbait, and I thought it was a hell of a show. What'd you think?
I thought it was pretty good, man. I mean, I thought it was, and the reason why I brought this up, honestly, is I was watching. We binge watched it the last week, just kind of checking out one of those. It was one of the top rated shows right now, so I think it's a big thing. So you're on it early, apparently. But yeah, I tell you what, it kept my attention the whole time. So I'm not gonna give any back or any spoilers here, but it's essentially about a guy that got kidnapped. and they're trying to hunt down his kidnapper. And the whole time, I mean, you're almost on an emotional roller coaster of going up and down, and you think it's this person, and then you think he's guilty, and then so on and so forth. And it really just kept my attention the entire time. I thought it was one of the better Netflix shows I've watched in a while, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you're spot on. It. I feel so often, and maybe this is my issue with watching TV shows, but you watch a show, especially one of that kind of what would you call it? That type of kind of mystery
Yeah.
type deal, and a lot. I get that a lot of times there's that big, oh my goodness, I never expected it. But a lot of times you kind of get drawn in and you see how things play out,
Yep.
and just as far as clickbait, like I said, I don't want to give away too much either. But I think you're spot on. It kept you kind of on your seats, wondering what the hell was going on. I mean, there were numerous times where I thought one thing, and then I thought the exact opposite of it. So
100%, man.
it kept me on my toes. That was a good series, definitely. Yeah, I mean, other than clickbait, I'm trying to think of any shows. You got any other ones on your list? I'd be interested to hear kind of what you got going on as far as TV. Because if we go down my list of TV shows, you're going to be hearing about The Office and The Office only. So
Yeah, so I got a couple things I am watching right now. One thing that I think everyone needs to watch, whether you're into it or not. I'm a huge science guy, kind of nerdy, pretty techie. And there's recently a documentary that came out around the Inspiration 4. It was the rocket that SpaceX shot off, and it's on Netflix. And dude, it's insane. Basically, it's an all civilian flight. They brought these guys in, shot them up to space for 3 days. And it was just an awesome documentary. So I encourage anyone to come check that out. I recently just watched that. And then another thing I'm looking to watch is actually Squid Game. So I keep hearing a lot
okay,
about it. Have you checked that out yet?
I did watch Squid Games, and I'll come back to Squid Games because I want to bring up that documentary you just said. I am definitely going to have to watch that, and I think the reason I love space documentaries. I mean, not to the point, where I'm sitting down and watching them, for hours and hours, and definitely not to the point where it's like a regular thing I watch. But every once in a while, when those good space documentaries come out, it's always interesting. I remember when I was younger, as a family sitting down, like I said, my three brothers and my parents, which, it's not easy to round up four boys, let alone the boys that we were. We were not easy kids to sit down and watch a movie together kind of quietly and pay attention was rare, but I'll never forget sitting down and watching Apollo 13. Um, as a younger kid, like that movie was insane, and that kind of just trajected into kind of all those space, whether it's documentaries or films. Even some of the newer ones, they've gotten a little crazy, but even the ones like Interstellar and stuff like that, I think are pretty interesting, which is always surprising because I'm not a movie person. So when I find little things, I latch onto it. So I'll have to give that a watch. You said that's on Netflix?
Yeah, it's on Netflix. It's called Countdown Inspiration Force Mission to Space. And like I said, it was about the recent mission, the four civilians. So they weren't astronauts that SpaceX launched into space. And honestly, man, I mean, we could have a whole episode on this, but things are going to change in our lifetime around how we know it is with
Oh,
space
for sure.
travel and different things like that. And this is kind of highlights everything that went into that and how these guys came from basically just civilians, not qualified in any way to be. I'm not going to say they're not qualified to be astronauts because they're great people, but they did not have the experience coming in, and they were still
No, they
able
were
to
not
know.
qualified. All right, don't
Yeah, I don't
sugarcoat.
want to say that. I
These
don't want to
people
say
were
that.
rich, so they had an opportunity.
No, so
But
that's what was interesting about it, though, is they're not. So it was all like a huge fundraiser. Um, I just encourage everyone to go check it out. It's one of those
yeah, I mean,
kind of
it's
feel good
okay. So
shows. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
and I'm not trying to ruin it. I'm not trying to put a damper in the mood. But in that field of civilian space travel, so to speak,
Yep.
it's not going to be regular people who are traveling that. All right, I don't want to sugarcoat that because there's no way. There's not a world that we live in that's definitely something that you have to spend a lot of. I thought
Dude,
the whole thing,
mark my words.
dude.
10 years from now.
I'm pretty sure.
You and I could go to space if we wanted to.
No
10
shot.
years from
10
now.
years?
Yep.
10
Yes.
years.
Yep.
I'm willing to put $10,000 down. Wait,
10,000.
hold on. Because here's what I'd say to that. Is I think you're right, but I'm pretty sure they said that they were selling tickets to the one is this the one the Amazon guy, Jeff Bezos?
No, you're talking about Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, okay, but nonetheless, his flight, I think they were selling him $80,000 flights.
Yes. So the initial flight they were.
Yeah,
But based
when
on
are
their
you going to
two
be able
flights
to
in,
afford an $80,000 vacation?
when they're sending people to space once a month, once every other week, like that price is just going to continue to drop. It's like anything. I
No.
will bet money that in 10 years you and I could go to space.
For what price? I mean, I believe you that it would be feasible, but for what price?
I'd say under 10 grand for sure.
I think that's a leap. Because isn't it expensive? The whole fuel, everything? Like, there's
It
no way.
is, but they're building the Starship. They're building all these things to send hundreds of people up there. Like I'm telling you, man,
Look,
10
I'm
years
sorry,
we
but
could go
there's
to
a
space.
lot of time between now and Star Wars. All right, pal? Like, Starship, come on, but we're not going to be in the sky looking down on Earth in 10 years. There's no shot. Not a typical civilian. I think people who have money will be able to enjoy the opportunity. I would have to disagree. I think eventually, sure. But 10 years, man, it's a lot of time, but it's not that much time.
I don't know. Either way, go check out this documentary, and
yes.
then we can have some more conversations around this.
I will. I'll tell you what. I'll watch it. We'll meet back at this point, and we'll reintroduce the subject. But
I want everyone listening to do the same.
but before we start talking about this, you brought up Squid Game. So you have not seen Squid Game?
I have not. No.
Okay. Well, okay. I'll talk about Squid Game a little here, and I'll keep it brief so I don't ruin everything. Squid Game is a cool show because the whole premise of it is that you basically compete in this thrilling game for money. There's this big pool that you're looking to win at the end of it, and so you're going through all these different they call them little games, and trying to outlast everybody essentially, right? And what makes it so interesting is that the games that they're playing are all like childhood games, and you kind of pick up as that goes on. And like I said, I'm probably already ruining it more than I should be. But the thing about Squid Game, and this is where people are probably going to dislike me a little for this, but it's just my honest take. I thought it was a great show. You've probably seen online that it's one of the most watched shows Netflix has ever dropped, if not the most. Were you able to see that? Am I speaking bullshit right now, or is that facts?
I can't confirm nor deny, but I can look up for if you want to keep rolling.
Yeah. So, but the thing about it is it's a Korean show, right? And which may be the reason that it is so interesting because it's kind of something that I haven't seen. I've never watched any Korean productions, so maybe that played into the fact that it ended up being so interesting. But the whole thing is in Korean, so you kind of have two options for someone who doesn't speak Korean to watch the film. And the first one is with Korean, the Korean voice with American subtitles or English. Wow, I said American subtitles. I'm an idiot. Sorry, English subtitles. All right, I apologize to that one. Or the other option is they do like a voiceover with English actors who will speak over it. And for me, not being someone who can engage in TV shows and movies very well, I'm not really the one to sit there and read subtitles, right? I just can't keep a train of thought for that long and sit in front of a TV and only just read these subtitles as this movie or show is going on. And because of that, I just didn't think I'd be interested in the show as much if I just had to read the whole thing. And so I did it with the English voiceover, and it just that also sucks. I don't know if have you ever seen any TV shows or anything where it's not in English, and so and I see this a lot on Netflix, but they'll kind of record over it in English, and it just whether it's the mouth's not syncing, whatever it may be, it just doesn't really add up. Have you seen that before?
Yeah, I've seen that before, and I've also heard multiple people tell me not to try to watch it with English.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably advise if I was going to go back and watch it with the subtitles, especially because I know I was so interested by it. But yeah, like I said, so I didn't. I think that hindered it a little bit for me.
Okay.
And this is why I think it's kind of shallow because by no means am I saying that the Korean production is not as good as the English production would have been, but I just it's not something that I can easily watch and can grasp my entertainment well. That being said, it's a cool show. And
Yeah.
essentially the whole thing boils down to them gambling against their own lives.
Yeah.
And so it's a really cool premise of a show. Whether you listen to it with the English voice or the original Korean, I would definitely give it a try because it is a cool show and it will kind of you know kind of keep you on your edge, it's
Uh,
make you wonder what the heck's going on.
okay. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. I can't find anything around the ratings. I've been checking it out. It's number one on Netflix right now, but I can't see anything long term as far as like where the rankings are at.
I could have sworn, and I'm pulling it up just real quick. Um, yeah, Squid Game. It says below is the list of Netflix top series is ranked by account views,
Okay.
and the highest is Squid Game season one with 142 million. The next one down from that is Bridgerton. I've never even heard of it.
You've not
But
watched
it's
that?
no. You see that?
Yeah, I watched it with my wife.
Really? With good stuff?
It's pretty good. Yeah, good show.
Okay. But that's at 82 million.
Okay.
So that's a big gap. 142 million to 82. So Squid Game by far is one of the most watched Netflix shows. So to kind of see that in a perspective, that should be enough to get you to go watch it.
Okay. I'm definitely going to check it out, man. So I'm gonna see if I can get my wife to binge watch it with me this weekend.
Yeah,
So
and it's funny too because I'm looking down this list because so number one Squid Game, two is Bridgerton, three is Lupin. You ever heard of Lupin?
yeah, I've heard
Lupin.
of that. Yep.
Okay. Then you have The Witcher, which I've heard of, but I never got into The Witcher. Um, and then Sex Life at 5, haven't heard of it. Stranger Things 3. Did you watch Stranger Things?
Great show. Great show.
I never saw the third season, to be honest.
You gotta watch it, man.
Dude, I thought the first two seasons were good, but it just wasn't my thing. And then we have Money Heist, which I believe is. Have you heard about Money Heist? I think it's a Brazilian film or
I've
something.
not watched it, but I've heard of it.
I know it's not in English. It's very similar to Squid Game when you have your choices to listening. So unfortunately, that one I never gave the chance as much as I probably should have.
Okay.
But then number 8, this is the one I wanted to get to. Number 8 on Netflix, Tiger King. What did you think about the Tiger King?
Tiger King, man. So I listen. I actually got a funny story about this. So I'm glad we're going off on this
I
tangent.
love to hear it.
So I'm sitting there. I watched Tiger King back. It was right when COVID started. Okay. So
Okay.
my wife, girlfriend at the time, Emirette, lived with the girl right above the varsity club in Morgantown, right across the stadium. All right.
Okay. Yep.
So COVID started. Basically, school shut down. Everything shut down. No one's working. I had to work. But at the time, like we just spent every weekend just watching like Netflix originals, like the three of us. So it was myself, Amaret, and a roommate would sit on the couch and we would just watch these Netflix originals.
That all you do?
Yeah.
No, I'm just
Yes.
kidding.
Yeah.
Go on,
So
go on.
Tiger King came around. One weekend we grabbed some drinks, sit on the couch, just start drinking. I think I don't even know what I was drinking at the time. Probably like some sort of beer, something like that. And I'm watching this Tiger King, and I'm just loving it, man. It's just a blast to watch, and it keeps going through, and they keep talking about these Joe Exotic condoms, and they just keep talking about the whole
Oh,
show.
Lord.
So I'm sitting there, man. I'm probably 10 beers deep at this time. I get on eBay. I start checking things out, seeing if I can get myself an original Joe Exotic condom. Okay. So I found one. I bid $200 on this
Get
thing.
out of
All
here.
right, I swear
Get
to you. I drop a bid on eBay. I look over, Amaret's about to kill me. Her roommate's
I
just sitting
believe
there
it.
like dying. And dude, you don't know what the craziest thing is? I was
You,
ready to buy this fucking condom, and I got outbidded.
you got
Like,
out.
what the hell is this?
I should know better. Time to put you on a little blast, a little flashback. Okay, I remember this was shortly after meeting you. I mean, it
Yep.
couldn't have been too much later. I remember we were hanging out one day, and I can't remember. I want to say we were going up to your dorm, and you were like, "Oh, I got a package," right? So you grab this
Yeah.
package, and we go up to your dorm, and you're like, "Yo, you want to see what I got?" And I was like, "Sure." Like, what's in the box? I have no idea. And you open it up, and it was like, oh my, it was like 30 different types of condoms, like,
Yeah.
all different. It had a couple different bottles of lubes. Like, I don't really remember. I did not look closely at what was in that box. But that was shortly after meeting you. So hearing that you bid, almost $200 or over $200 on a Joe Exotic condom does not shock me completely.
Yep. And the sad thing about that is this probably all went to waste and ended up in the trash can.
That's so sad to hear. But all
Oh
right,
man.
let's move on. I'm gonna fall asleep before we talk about any more TV here. Although
All right.
I love the little condom talk there.
All right.
But
You want
let's
to
get
jump into
into,
sports?
yeah, what's supposed to be on TV. Let's get into sports. You had brought something up to me actually a little earlier in the week, that I hadn't heard before, and then we kind of got back talking about it a little before we started recording. You want to go? Give everyone a little insight on what's happened with Coach O down at LSU, and I would try to say his full name. I'll let you handle that because I will surely mess it up.
So I'm gonna try to pronounce it one time, and then we're just gonna roll with Coach O. How about that?
That works for me.
Yeah. So a lot of you guys that follow sports, you probably heard this week that Coach Orgeron. All right, I think
That
I was
sounded
good
good.
there.
That
Yep.
sounded good.
Coach Orgeron of LSU, uh, basically came to an agreement at the end of last week. It was right after the Florida win, that they were going to part ways after this season. Okay, so Coach O went on with Joe Burrow to win the national championship back in 2019, I believe. Um, so they won the national championship, and then he had a full season last year, and then so far this season. And basically, from that point, he went on to he's been 9-8 since that national championship. So he's 49-17 overall, but then 9-8 since then. So they came out, they said they're parting ways. My initial thought was like, man, this seems a little quick. You know what I mean? Like, he just came off from having this quarterback that's having a lot of success in the NFL. We'll get into
Right.
that later. I understand he's 9-8, but he also had a COVID year, like a lot of weird things going recruiting. I was like, dude, this is odd. Like, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. He's been there for a while. He's been successful. Seems awfully quick. But since then, news has came out that yes, he's 9-8, and that's not great since that national championship. But I guess he's having a lot of off the field issues. Okay, so that's kind of more of where this is coming from, and I think a lot of that's like carrying over to the field and why they haven't been that successful. But a little bit of backstory is Coach O and his wife actually got a divorce, or ex-wife got a divorce right after that national championship back in 2019.
Okay.
And since that point, supposedly his off the field actions have not been great. He's went a little crazy. So I guess he's had quite a few girlfriends since that point. And many of these girlfriends he actually is bringing to practice. So it's multiple girls he's bringing to the practice, hanging around the facility. I guess a lot of them have kids, and there's been rumors that these kids have been running through drills with the players, like on the field, like all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And seems like Coach O's quite the ladies' man.
There
But
you go.
one thing that I think was interesting, that other news that kind of broke this week is, so okay, man, the guy's going through a divorce, girlfriends. I understand that you probably shouldn't be bringing them to practice, but supposedly there's a story that came out where Coach O pulled up to a gas station. All right, so he pulled up to this woman that was at the gas station pumping her gas, and he said, "Hey, you look like you work out." Okay.
What a way to
Um,
start off the conversation, too.
Yep. So he follows that statement with saying, "We could work out together." And then the woman went on to inform Coach O that she was married and pregnant, in which he responded, Why does that matter? Okay.
Right.
So I'll link this in the show notes for everyone to take a look at it. I'm looking at
Guy's
a tweet
killing
right
it.
now. Yeah. But it comes out later that the woman was a wife of a high-ranked LSU official, and the word reached the LSU Board of Supervisors, and turned into a huge thing and blew up. So all this happened before they found out that everyone found out that the LSU was moving on to him. I can only assume that this was somehow linked to that incident. So it seems like there's a lot going on here. It seems like we continue to have the string of just coaches that can't get their act together. But this is nuts, man. What are you thinking?
Dude, there's a lot to boil down about the situation. First off, it's exciting to be here yet again, talking about another coach. I feel like this might have to be the introduction to a segment that we have where each week we find out what fucked up stuff that a coach is doing. Because it has not failed us one time to look into the sports news and find something about a coach doing something they probably shouldn't have been doing. That being said, it sounds like Coach O might have been taking some advice from Urban. But yeah, so it's crazy because you have this guy who, in the coaching, in the mindset of a coach, was at the top. He is at the time that he won the national championship, the best college, because they won that year, correct, with Joe?
Yep, they won.
Yeah. So he's at one of the best football teams in the nation, arguably the best considering they won the national championship. You have one of the best players behind it. You have this great program. And the funny thing too about Coach O, and if you don't know who Coach O is, and I don't know how tricky it's going to be to find a video of him talking if you just type in Coach O talking, but he is an interesting person to listen to. Let's put it that way. I think the guy, I mean, he must be, I don't know where he's from. I could try to tell you where he's from. It's somewhere south, but a crazy voice he has on him. But to kind of be at that top like that, as someone that a lot of people I thought liked, he had some issues with some of his comments that he made. But down in the South, at these bigger schools, people really enjoyed him. And so, such a high respected game. And then I guess you have these issues with your wife, and, how does that spiral out, when you're in the position that you're in? I'm sure anybody who's in that position who becomes single all of a sudden is going to have opportunities. Let's put it that
Yep.
way. So I don't think there's anything wrong with him exploring those. To hear that he was kind of bringing them onto the practice field, like kind of showing them off, that might be a little more questionable. I think and probably not something he should have been doing. But nonetheless, the position he was in, I kind of get it. But to take it to the point that he did, that's awful. And then to bring in this situation with this high ranking official at the university's wife, which, let's back up to starting the conversation. So he says, you look like you work out. And I don't know what kind of embarrassment I'd be in, first off, if I ever said that to a girl, right? But then to say that to a girl and the response to be, I'm pregnant. Like that is, there's something wrong with that. I don't know, what was going through Coach Zoe's head. I don't know if he'd had some drinks, whatever was going on. But to say that and then to respond, I'm pregnant, I don't know what it would be like to be in that situation, because I don't really think, I mean, obviously he can't come back from this one, but, if that were two random people, that guy's not coming back from that comment, so that already trouble. And then for it to end up being a high ranking official, and that's embarrassing. That's tough. I wish his game was a little smoother because maybe he'd still have a job. But I'd be interested to see where he goes from here, because the thing about a coach who wins a national championship, as awful as something this might be, he might not be done coaching.
No, no way.
So I'll be interested to see what comes from it. But yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I the whole time that I can't get out of the back of my head is like, can you just picture him saying this with his deep voice? So
No,
he's sitting there,
that's what
hey you, you look like you work out.
dude. I'm trying to. He sounds like if you took Kermit the Frog, okay, you put the biggest set of balls on him that you could find, right? Drop his voice down and ship him off for 10 years to the South. And that's what you get at Coach O talking. So for him to approach someone to make that comment, as who he is with the voice that he has. I mean, I'm surprised that the story didn't go like he said that and the lady just started cracking up and started recording him. Because if I was a bystander in this and I heard that interaction go down, I would be very upset that I didn't have it recorded.
Yeah.
And if I worked at that gas station, I would track down that film and I would save it. And I would, being myself right now, I would pay a lot of money to see that film if it somehow was out there because it would have to be priceless.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy stuff, man. So what do you think? You want to jump into the NFL? And we'll talk
Let-
about sports?
Let's do it. It was a somewhat fun week in the NFL. In the broader scheme of things, I'd love to kick off with your Browns. To be honest,
Yeah.
you know, just from my perspective of things, not necessarily being a fan, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
What they played Thursday night, correct?
Yeah, they played last Thursday. They played the Broncos. They
Yep.
ended up winning that game 17-14.
And I'll tell you, this is going to be the time I have to bring something up, people, and this is very serious because now I have the opportunity to speak on a recorded platform, and however great that is, I have to realize when I have said incorrect things. So I got some more backlash about last week when I said -2.5. And I went back and I did indeed say -3 in the podcast. But to defend myself, I can post the slips if it comes down to it. But I had them at 2.5. I promise you, I had them at 2.5. I said 3 on the podcast, so that's what I should have been looking at. And I shouldn't have said that that's not what I said because it definitely is what I said. But yes, I was wrong there. So I just wanted to bring that up. But I bring that up now because I also said while I was saying that I was going to hammer down the Broncos. And I did hammer down the Broncos. And that did not work for me either. So it was kind of a pitiful week come Thursday night, kind of realizing those things. But nonetheless, Browns came out, no Baker, no Kareem Hunt, no Nick Chubb, and showed that they can still run the ball with
Yep.
any of them.
Yep.
They came out. I'm not saying Broncos have an incredibly good D, but the start of the season, their defense looked good. And so for them to come out, what's the guy's name? Johnson, right?
Yep.
Is it DeErnest? No, who? What is? I'm thinking of someone else.
Do you earnest? No, you're
Is it?
right. Do
No,
earnest.
that's right. Okay, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. I'll tell you what. I picked him up on my fantasy league. He
Yep.
dropped like 24 points for me or something. So, to show that you can come out and still be that dominant, I think it also touches, how kind of real their defense is. Because to come out and not necessarily have your first team offense out on the field and still be able to keep the other team's points less than your team's points is always impressive. So I think that stood out. And it made, I kind of shit on the Browns a little bit previously, especially after hearing this stuff with Baker and the running backs being out. But now I'm more excited for them.
Yeah.
And now, if they, me personally, I think it's going to boil down to that playoff spot is going to be tough. They're probably looking at a wild card game. And so, I think it's going to be tough getting into the playoffs, but I'd love to see them there because I'd love to see what they can do.
Yeah.
But that's my take. Let's hear from you, the Cleveland fan himself.
No, I completely agree, and honestly, it validates a lot of what I was thinking. We are a good football team. I just don't know if we're quite good enough, to be honest with you. So to go in there and not have our starting quarterback and our first and second string running back, and still be able to go up and play ball and pick up a win against a Denver team that I'm not going to say they're good, but I don't think they're the worst team in the NFL either. I mean, they can play some ball. I was really impressed. And like you're saying, we played really good defense. I think our defense still is one of the better defenses in the league. The backfield's got a little bit of work to do, but our defensive line is great. And really just came out and showed that we could continue to run the ball. So Johnson actually had 22 carries for 146 yards, one touchdown.
That's a day.
Yeah, get solid day. So overall, I'm happy to be a Browns fan, but kind of exactly what you're saying. I think it'll be tough for us to make the playoffs. I really do. And it's just so Baker might not be back this week and we play the Steelers in what I consider probably a must-win game at home. And then we follow that up with the Bengals, which are just so good right now. Patriots, Lions, and then the Ravens back-to-back, which I don't know what the hell the NFL is doing with scheduling, but hey, that's a story for another day. And then finish out the season Raiders, Green Bay, Steelers, and Bengals again. I just don't see where we get enough wins to make the playoffs here. I really don't, and I hate to say that because I think we're a good football team. I just think we had bad cards dealt to us this year, having to play the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Cardinals right off the rip. I don't think anyone expected for two of those teams to be as good as they are, and then the Chiefs, they've kind of been a little bit of stinkers as the seasons went on, but they're still a good football team. You can
Still the
never,
Chiefs.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
still the Chiefs, and it's Patrick Mahomes. But I think we're there. I mean, the good thing is with the expanded playoffs is there's still a chance that we can make it in as one of these wild card spots. But we'll see. I mean, I'm not super optimistic. I definitely wouldn't be putting money on them making a playoff run this year. I can tell you that.
Yeah. No, it would be interesting. I'd love to hear. Actually, I'm gonna do that real quick. I'm gonna look up Super Bowl odds for the Browns' favor to win the Super Bowl because that might be a fun one to dabble with. I'm just saying because I'm guessing it's pretty high, but I'll get back to you with that number. Um, but yeah, I mean, rest of the NFL, it was actually a pretty interesting week, I'd say.
Yeah.
Um, Looking at the scores, just trying to recap, Giants blew up the Panthers. I was starting to think the Panthers were looking pretty good. Um,
I agree. I thought they were
so
going to be a good football team this year, but
now,
they surprised the hell out of me the last couple of weeks.
right. So I was, I expected more from the Panthers. But the thing about the Giants, a lot of people label them as a bad football team. I think they are not a good football team. But you look at some of the weapons they have on offense, they look kind of good on paper. They have some good wide receivers, some good tight ends. And you have Saquon, you get him healthy. They have some stuff to put together. So for them to put up 25, not necessarily too surprising, but for the Panthers to only put up 3, that was rough. And I think for like almost a majority of the first half, the score was like 3-5. I
Yeah.
remember seeing that floating around for a while. So good for the Giants, but bad for the Reds or Washington football team because that's another NFC East team getting a win. Patriots blew out the Jets. That's crazy. Titans Chief. This was a good game. What's your thoughts on it? Titans ended up winning 27-3 at home.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. We've talked about the Titans a couple times this podcast. I think we kind of spoke down on them. They're like week 1 or 2. I think it might have been right after the Jets lost back in week 4, actually.
Yep.
And we just thought that they were going to kind of be a bust this year, but they've really turned it around. I mean, they picked up a win against the Bills and the Chiefs the last couple of weeks. I am a little concerned about the Chiefs, but again, like we were saying, it's still Patrick Mahomes. I think this is a good football team, man. I really do. I mean, I question Tannehill's ability. I still do. I always have. He's kind of went through these streaks his whole career. He's been good, then bad, and then he then sometimes steps in and has really consistent stretches. But he's playing decent football. It's not bad. And one thing I want to highlight is, dude, Derrick Henry, in my opinion, I have to say it. I think he might be the best running back in the NFL. I've
Okay.
tried to avoid it. And I understand we think in terms of fantasy a lot. In fantasy perspective, maybe not, because he doesn't have as much of receiving upside. But I don't think there's any running back solely on running back talent that is better than him currently in the NFL.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I want to make a suggestion. Okay, I want to make a suggestion, and unfortunately, I don't have the voice where the suggestion will get hurt. But I wish that we could get some NASA scientists and some very high level, like I don't know, biological scientists, because there need to be tests ran on Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
Because
man.
I mean, you look at that guy and I don't care what anyone says, he's not human. That
Nope.
guy is not human. And I was just thinking about it because I remember seeing some of his highlights and his stats in high school. I would like to hear where he was before high school because I don't believe I think he was created in the lab
Yeah.
because how unreal he is on the football field. I mean, there's I just don't think, especially I was gonna say there's never been a running back who I've seen just dominate in the NFL as much as he has. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think there are some running backs that have dominated in their eras. I don't think there's ever, with how good I think, defense is compared to what defense was maybe a little bit ago and maybe, I'm not the smartest NFL mindset when it comes to defenses, but for him to run over, guys who are bigger and stronger than, defensive players were, however long ago is insane. I mean, watching what he does, how fast he is. I mean, the guy literally goes from breaking 80-yard touchdowns to throwing a 5-yard touchdown pass. Like, that's not real. You're not human. He is made in a video game. That's what happened.
Yep.
Madden, Madden 2000 came out with my player, and these scientists were like, "Let's play with this," and they made Derrick Henry, and they looked at each other, and a light bulb went out, and they figured it out, and either made him in a lab or flew one of these spaceships they're sending up, civilians in, and dragged in something from out there and threw him on the football field because the guy's unreal. And I think you're right. We did kind of shit on the Titans a little bit, the last couple weeks. We did mention, they were missing some players, so that didn't work in their favor. And I think you're right about Ryan Tannehill. He's just, I don't think he's the guy. I think he can fill his role, but I don't know if
Yep.
he's the guy.
He's good enough.
But I mean, Derrick Henry is unreal to light up the Chiefs like that. To hold the Chiefs to 3 points, I think is a big deal. A lot of people will talk about the Chiefs not being that great this season, which in itself is arguable. But I think a lot less people would have the audacity to say the Chiefs' offense isn't good. So with that being said, to hold them to only 3 points is crazy. You have people like Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes. It's kind of crazy to see. But yeah, that's the Titans-Chiefs game. I have the Washington loss to the Packers 24. Don't even want to talk about it. We all knew it was going to happen. It's going to happen the rest of the year. Screw Washington. Love them, though. Falcons, Dolphins, kind of not a great game. I think the Falcons are shaping up a little nicely. I don't know if you have anything to comment on this game, but
No, I don't have a whole lot here. I think the Falcons could be a good football team. We'll just
yeah,
we'll have to
call
see.
see what happens. I mean, I don't think they're a playoff team. They'll win some games, but whatever. But big game here. I would like to hear your perspective on this one. Bengals Ravens. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so I actually this is interesting. I've hinted a couple times about Joe Burrow's kind of heating up here. I hate to say this again because this continues to just point towards the Browns not making the playoffs, but the Bengals are heating up, man. And Jamar Chase should be. He's got to have Rookie of the Year locked, 100%.
Yeah, I think
mean,
you're absolutely right.
The guy is a beast. Joe Burrows is coming off the injury, which I had a lot of concerns about going in the season. Just lighten things up. Their offensive line has taken a step up, which I didn't think they were going to at the beginning of this year. And I mean, this is a good football team. This is a scary football team. And I hate to say it, but I can see the Browns dropping 4 games to both these teams. So we got to play each of them twice still. And I don't see how the Browns can compete. But I think Cincinnati is a real deal. I will say this now, and again, I hate to say this, but I think Cincinnati has a chance, especially with this game, the win here, of winning our division. I really do. I'm looking at the rest of their schedule. I think they can potentially beat up. They play the Jets. They play us twice. They play. They do have the Chargers, which is probably their most challenging game remaining left on the schedule, and then they do play the Chiefs, which I think they could beat the Chiefs, man, and then they win the division. It's insane, but I think there's an outcome here where they win it.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't shock me. And you look at that division is unreal right now. I don't think there's a more competitive division in the NFL. It's pretty nuts to look at those teams and to think that the last 5-week seasons, which you brought this up before. I think they screwed up with the NFL schedule this year. I think someone said, "Hey, we're doing a 17th game," and they were like, "Shit." Right? Because the Washington football team deals with the same thing. I think it's week. Hold on. So there's 17 weeks. So I think week 14 it's like it goes Eagles. I don't know which ones, but it's Eagles, Cowboys, Eagles, Cowboys. Yep. Like, that's bizarre. Like, come on, mix it up. Like, you could have thrown that. I get that you want some of those division games at the end. But to throw all of them at the end is just kind of bizarre.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
And
but
all I got to say is I know Roger Goodell, you're a big fan of this podcast. If
of
you'd like
course.
for me to create you an optimization equation to schedule for you next year, just hit me up. It's fine. You don't even have
Yeah,
to pay me a whole lot. I can do it in a few minutes.
no biggie, Roger. We got this, all right? Hit up Wes. Sorry, we don't have this. Wes got you. I don't have any business doing anything he just mentioned. But yeah, great. It was a great game though. Bengals won 41-17. The game was a lot closer though coming down to the stretch. You look at that score, and I think you'd think it's a blowout. But there were a couple chances the Ravens had early in the third quarter and whatnot where they could have kind of put some stuff together. I personally I get that they lost 41-17. I still have Lamar as my front runner for MVP. With all the injuries that the Ravens have gone through and everything, for them to be as competitive as they are, and you look at MVP, and a lot of people talk about this, what does MVP really boil down to? And the way I look at it is, if you, as most valuable person, if you took that person away from a team, how much does that team struggle, right? And I think out of anybody in the league, if you took Lamar Jackson off the Ravens, I think that team, no shot, they're 5-2. Absolutely no shot. So I still have Lamar as my current front runner for MVP. I like Justin Herbert earlier, past two games. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but I think it's a little less likely just because even though, like I said, Lamar lost this game, he's still out there putting up great
Yep.
numbers. Any opinions on what your front runner right now for MVP would be?
MVP, honestly, I do not have a strong opinion either way. I did think Lamar Jackson might have been up in the conversation, but they're
Hmm.
starting to tailor back. The one person that I think there is a shot, to be honest with you, and I've always been very harsh on this guy, is Kyler Murray. He's playing good football. They're 7-0. I mean, Cardinals are legit, and it's interesting to me. But I see a world where they run this season and they go on to win the Super Bowl. And I mean, how could you not name him MVP? From a guy that no one thought would have a whole lot of success, being able to really turn around and play some good football.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that, but I don't. It's just tough for me because I think you're right. The leader on that team is, it's Kyler Murray, right? Runs the office, and he's doing a great job of it. No one decides that. But once again, and obviously, like I said, it's different for each person. But going back to what I said about the most valuable person, I think you could take Kyler Murray off that team, and that team, maybe they're not 7-0, right? But that's still a winning football team. I don't think you could make that same case for the Ravens.
Yeah, yeah.
But I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. It's tough. It really
It,
is.
it is tough, but I'm going to speed run through the rest of these games because it's nothing that's too special. I'm going to stop for the last two, though. But so Rams beat the Lions 28-19. That's not a surprise. Waiting for the Lions to get their first win. I thought they would probably have it by now, but they don't. We have the Raiders beating the Eagles. I thought was interesting, actually. Both these teams I kind of keep tucked in the back corner, right? Because Raiders, I think, have some players. I just think there's too much going on with them outside the locker room for them to be that successful on the field, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the Eagles, I like the direction the Eagles are heading, even though they're in the NFC East, and I don't want to see them win. I kind of like what they're doing, but yeah, I don't know if you have anything too crazy about that. And then Cardinals took a big win against the Texans. Bucks took a big win against the Bears. Those could have been easily foreseen. But then we got into our locks, right? So we both
Yep.
had locks later in the week. I took the Colts +4. However, Colts took it easy, 30-18.
Yep.
It was a rainy, wet game. To be honest, it probably would have been more low scoring had it not been for a few turnovers that really shifted it. But I'll take, anytime I put a lock in that's successful, I love to hear it. And then you had the Saints Seahawks, which unfortunately did not pan out the same. Saints did end up getting the win, but they ended up only winning by 3. And what'd you have them at?
I had them at 4.5. So
Okay, so
that was just a
close,
sloppy
but
game, man. It
oh,
really
it
was.
was absolutely. I'm not. I don't know how much I'm looking forward to seeing much of either of those teams coming forward.
Yeah.
Although I do have Michael Thomas in every fantasy league I am, so I'm patiently waiting for him to come back.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so that was the week last week. Um, that we went into that a little more detail than I thought we were. Just real quick, I don't know if you have the NFL schedule up for this upcoming week, but anything that stands out to you?
I did. I just pulled it up real quick.
Okay. Sorry to put
No,
you on the
you're good.
spot.
I'm a little bit yeah, I got put on the spot a little bit on this one. But I mean, I do want to see Browns Steelers. That's always a big game, fun game to watch. So I think that's really that, and then also we got a great Thursday night football game tomorrow. I mean, probably the best one of the season so far. We got the Packers versus the Cardinals, so I'll definitely be tuning in for that. What
I'm,
about you?
I'm yeah. Oh, I'm thrilled about this Thursday night. I think this is, to be honest, I think this is a game everybody wants to see. Packers came out. We've mentioned it before. Had a terrible start, game one of the season against the Saints. Right,
Yep.
looked awful. Whatever. Since then, looks like they could be front runner to win the Super Bowl.
Yep.
They've just been off the charts, and then to put them against a team like the Cardinals, who we just mentioned, 7-0, best team in the league, arguably with the MVP, calling the plays or throwing the ball. It's going to be a great game. I believe when I looked at it, it had Packers +3. Is that correct?
I am.
Cardinals -3.
I'm seeing Cardinals -6.5 right now on
Holy!
ESPN, but let me double check that on DraftKings.
Yeah, I'm gonna double check that too because I personally, I think I would love to go. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too. I'm seeing
Yep.
6.5.
I'm taking Green Bay all day.
Yeah, 6.5. I think
6.5.
that's a lot of points for Aaron Rodgers to work with. I mean,
Yep.
to say that the Cardinals will win by a touchdown, I think is extremely less likely that the Packers, lose or win by less than a touchdown. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
So
I completely agree.
yeah,
That'll be
so
fun to watch. We maybe that'll get brought back up in our leaks I keep saying leaks. Jeez, locks of the week here later
mhm.
on in the show.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
And then the only other game that catches my eyes would be the Washington Broncos game. I
Yep.
think Washington has a great opportunity to win this game, but we'll get into that a
Yeah.
little later.
Yeah, real quick, Jack. I know I haven't been following as much, but jump into the World Series real quick. Kind of
Yeah,
talk through your thoughts there.
absolutely. So World Series is set. We have the Houston Astros playing the Atlanta Braves, and this is the worst thing for someone like myself as a Washington fan because you have the Braves versus the Astros. The Astros, I hate them. I said this before. I hate the Astros. They're cheaters. I think a lot of people don't like them around the league, and I just don't want them to ever win. After what's gone on, and I get there were a lot of teams that were speculated to do this, and they're the ones that caught. I don't care. We played them in the World Series, during a year that they cheated, and years building up to them cheating. I don't want to see the Astro wins. But on the flip side to that, we have the Atlanta Braves, who are the division rivals of the Washington Nationals. So I don't win here. The way I win here is I pick a team who I think that's going to win that night, and I lay it on them. And tonight I have the Astros. They are playing game two. They lost. Astros lost game one, but I think the offense and the firepower of the Astros is going to pick up, and they're going to be pretty good. I think to be completely honest, I think the Astros win it. I'm not thrilled about that thought, but I think they come back, they win the series. I mean, that offense, cheaters or not, they got some firepower behind them.
Yep, they're up 5-1 right now in the middle of the third. The Astros are.
Oh my God, it's already 9 o'clock.
Yep.
Oof. Okay. All right,
We'll
let's
keep
keep
the show
moving.
moving,
Yeah,
but I want to jump into. We had a big Formula One race this weekend. We talked about
I
last
love
weekend
it.
down in Texas, and I tell you what, Jack's got me addicted, man, because I am
Dude,
watching this like a hawk. But you want to jump in and tell everyone kind of the gist of what happened?
dude, I'll give you a rundown because this is a great thing that's been introduced to my life. So I love sharing of it. And a race in Austin, it was a huge race. I mean, I remember one of the first things that we talked to about because we once again, it was a later race, so it was at 3 this past weekend. But we did hop on Discord together, me and Wesley, and we did, we were able to talk about the race and everything. And I remember one of the first things that we had mentioned was how crowd. I mean, it was packed, and So I'm psyched and I'm pretty committed. I would assume you're pretty committed, but we'll see what happens. But to getting to a race in the near future. So we have Miami coming up in May, and then Austin again next year, which will be later in the year. I don't know if that's something that you're looking to do, but I definitely would love to get out there for an F1 race, especially after seeing how crazy it was there, right?
Yeah. Dude, mark my
Uh,
words. I'm saying it now. Just like I'm going to space here in 10 years, we're going to make it happen this year. All right, let's do this thing.
Yeah, I don't know about the space, but I'm all for it. But building up to the race, one thing that I thought was hilarious, and I can't remember when you hopped on, but I thought it was hilarious. So before the race, they do a track walk, right? And they invite all the VIP, guests to come out into the track and stand next to these cars right before they go off to the race. And the names that they had out there, this is an F1 race. And the names that I saw while watching this, they call it a grid walk, because what happens is these guys from the TV crews, they walk down and literally just grab people and talk to them, whether they're racers, they're guests at the events, someone in F1, whoever it may be. So in this grid walk, I saw Meg the Stallion, I saw Chris Bosch, Shaquille O'Neal, all these different types. Ben Stiller was there. It's such a wide range. I thought it was hilarious the type of people who are coming out for this event. But I just think that, kind of gives some credit to, how good F1 is kind of turning. It's been huge lately. It's been blowing up. You have these huge names paying attention. But yeah, to get into the race, it was super exciting. You had Verstappen, who was leading by 6 points at the time, or 4 points. I think four.
Yeah, it was somewhere in that range.
I think it was 4 points coming the beginning of the race in the drivers' championship, and he had pole position, so he was starting out first. You had Hamilton behind him, and then third, I believe you had Perez.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the other Red Bull driver. And right off the start, I mean, it was so exciting. One of the coolest starts I've seen as I've been newer to the sport of F1. But you get these guys essentially drag racing off the stop. So the start of an F1 race is the standing start. So all these cars are parked essentially on the grid. You get 5 red lights that go across. And once all the red lights go out, it's a drag race to the first corner. And so to have these two guys fighting for the championship, being Max Verstappen in first, and then Richard Hamilton, but right behind him, it was just crazy to see, right? And then to see then Sergio Perez right behind him, who's then trying to help Verstappen out of that first turn. It's just a nuts situation. If you like racing, you get it. If you don't like racing, just imagine 3 guys that hate each other trying to race, 200 feet going, 200 miles per hour. Probably more than 200 feet, but you get what I'm saying. And so crazy start. Hamilton comes out with a beautiful start. Sorry. So Lewis Hamilton jumps in front of Max, and that sets the pace for the first portion of the race. Lewis kind of steps in front, but not too much. And then where things get crazy is when we start getting into pit stops. So I actually did put some notes down when I was watching it. So Max, who started the race in first, ended up in second, was the first to pit at lap 11. And the whole point of this pit is to get fresher tires to go faster than Lewis's. So while he loses 28 seconds behind Lewis, he not only knows that Lewis has to pit and sometime in the near future, but now he'll have however many laps that is with faster tires, right? So he comes out, he's way behind Hamilton. Then Hamilton comes in and he does his pit stop, and then Max Verstappen comes back out on front. So then you have Max and then Lewis Hamilton. Then you go through that cycle again where Verstappen pits at lap 30 and then Hamilton pits at 38. And what ends up happening is with about, 15 laps left in this race, everybody's done their pit stop, and you have Max Verstappen who's 8 seconds in front of Lewis Hamilton, right? And this is what, this is kind of what everyone is expecting. So you have Lewis Hamilton on faster tires going a little bit faster, trying to track down Max Verstappen. And he has 15, and I understand 8 seconds does not sound like a lot, That's a lot of time when it comes to racing. It's hard to make up for 8 seconds. So to do that in 15 seconds is tough. And it turns into a nail biter. And what ends up happening is in the last couple laps, Lewis finally gets about 2 seconds behind Max, slowly creeping up. But then you have these racers who are now getting lapped by these front runners in the race. So people who are in the position 20 and 21, whatever, they were now getting lapped by Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. But what makes that so interesting is Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton are still fighting for this position. So it's at first Max thinks he's screwed because, and I'm trying to remember who it was. I believe it was Mick Schumacher who drives for Haas, but is like almost blocking Max and slowing him down and Hamilton's creeping up even more. But then all of a sudden, what happens is Max Verstappen ends up getting DRS, which essentially, a very beginner way to put it is a boost, right? So he gets a boost on a straight, and right when he gets that boost, Lewis stepped right outside the DRS zone. So he was actually too far behind Max Verstappen to get that boost because you have to be within 1 second of the car in front of you, and he was at like 1.05. So he didn't get the DRS boost. Max Verstappen did because he was lapping who was it? Mick Schumacher, and ultimately takes that little lead that he's able to take back and glides it to the win. So it was a super nail biter race. I know that it doesn't sound, not a great explanation, but I'm telling you guys, you have to give it a watch. I think Wes can attest. I brought this to Wes. I said, this is really cool. It's really exciting. And now the last 2 races we've watched together, and it's been a hell of a time.
Yeah, man, it's been a lot of fun. It was a super, super fun race to watch. The strategy really went into it. I thought it was just awesome. And to see that Verstappen undercut him, pitted early. And then at first, I didn't think that was going to work out for him basically the whole race. And it really did. So it was very interesting. The strategy went into it. It was a lot of fun. It puts Verstappen up in the Drivers' Championship. And then I was reading something a little bit earlier about the next 2 tracks, usually favoriting Red Bull. So we might see ourselves a new champion here this year. But what I thought was super interesting is right after the race on October 25th, Lewis Hamilton actually came out and tweeted, "It's not over," with a picture of him climbing out of the cockpit of his race car. So I'm super excited to see what's to come up. So I'm sure we'll be jumping on Discord, watching these final races. If anyone wants to jump on with us, let us know. We'd love to have you. But it's a lot of fun. I'm really excited. We definitely got to make that race happen, though, next year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And a couple things to leave you on F1. Like you said, there's six races left, I believe. And it's a 12-point difference right now between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. And just for context, first place gets 25 points. I believe second place in a race gets 18. So, I mean, if Hamilton essentially can beat out Verstappen for 2 of the races and tie him for the rest, it could make things really interesting down the line. And one thing that's cool about F1 is there's so much stuff that's unpredicted. You don't know when a crash is going to happen. You don't know when there's going to be a issue with your power supply. You don't know different things going wrong. So there could legitimately be a race where Max's car just breaks down or Lewis's car breaks down, which could make things pretty crazy down the stretch. But one thing I wanted to mention about F1, because I actually said you were wrong, and this is going back to what I said earlier. I'm glad that I have my opportunities to correct this, because you had mentioned in the last race that there were people kind of deciding whether or not to pit at all during the race. And this was new to me. I never knew that was even a thing people played around with. And I actually think I corrected you, and I said, no, they were trying to determine, when they wanted to make their one stop. But going back and looking at the race, you were actually right. There were 2 people who were determining whether or not to make any stops. One being someone farther. I think it might have been Antonio Giovinazzi. I can't remember who the other one. And he ended up going the whole race without pitting, which I then found out was the first time that had happened in 24 years. So it's definitely not a regular thing, but it is in fact what he was doing. And the other person who was deciding to do or was thinking about doing that was Lewis Hamilton, which I think is what you had brought up when we talked about it earlier. So you were absolutely correct, and I missed that. And so that made 2 weeks ago even more interesting after the fact. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up and Just kind of correct myself, make it clear.
Yep. All right, man. So I think it's time. We're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna jump into our locks of the week. So we're gonna change up the format a little bit. So Jack and I were talking before the show, and we were talking. We said, hey, we want to get a little skin in the game here. All right. So make our picks even that more important to you guys out here. So if you follow us, you know that we're putting our money where our mouth is. So we came up with something fun. We have an idea we're gonna roll with on how we're going to kind of do that. So a little bit of background on what we're going to do. So every week, if you've listened to the past few weeks, we've both given you a lock of the week individually. And that's just one pick that we feel really confident about that we're just going to lock in and say, yeah, we're confident in this bet. So, but how we're going to change up this week is we both decided going into today that we're going to throw in $200 or $100 each into a pot. Okay. So as a whole, as the Bouncing Back podcast, we have $200 currently sitting in this pot. We're going to go ahead every week and we're going to continue the individual locks of the week. So each of us will pick a single lock that we really like, and we're going to go ahead and lock it in. And what we're going to do is we are going to take $25 of this $200 pot and lock it in on individually those two locks. Okay, so it's combined money. We're going to try to grow this thing together. But we're also going to take it a step further and say, okay, so we've picked these locks of the weeks going into the week or going into the podcast episode, so there's not a whole lot to debate there. But we're actually going to lock in then another 3-team parlay for another $25, where we're going to sit here and talk through another bet that we would like to lock in for you guys. And basically place 3 bets for $25 each week. We're going to see how long we can make this run last. We might run out of money in no time,
Right.
or we might turn it into something. We don't really know. So we're going to run through this and see where it goes and have a little bit of fun. But Jack, you want to go and kick us off with your lock of the week?
Yeah, and just real quick, and just to clarify, not only for myself, but for people paying attention too. So I believe the premise of the parlay, which I have deemed that we're gonna call it. What was it? I had a word picked out for it. I gotta remember what it was. I'll come back to that. But the thought is that it's a 3-leg parlay, and we use each of our locks in that parlay, and then without any prior planning or talking about it, we then pick a third leg in that parlay, and then we ride it all together. So you'll have our 2 locks. Those 2 locks will be involved in our parlay, and then we'll have that third leg just to kind of top it off. Is that right? Is that kind of what we were thinking?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So to get to my lock, I was looking around the NFL, and to be honest, I really liked the Titans. I think we had talked even before, just with the Titans, that was they were getting even spread or maybe -1. It's a super close spread, and
Yep.
I better yet just pull that up here, because I like the Titans. Yeah, +1, so even on the money line, is what I'm seeing. So that's interesting from a team coming off. Now I want to be careful with the Titans because we had our doubts so early. I don't want to completely shift off that mindset. I do think they end up winning this game, but I think the play still is involved with this game. I'm taking under 51 with the total. And here's
Uh,
why. I think we have a running back duel here. I'm not taking away. AJ Brown had a hell of a week. Okay. You had Julio Jones who had some catches. So the throwing game of the Titans is starting to come back alive. But you have Derrick Henry, and I just don't think, and maybe this is where I'm wrong, but I don't think that Derrick Henry's going to run for an 80-yard touchdown every game, right? So I got to imagine at some point that slows down the offense just because he's running it, even though he's picking up at like 5 yards a carry. And then you have the Colts, who I love Jonathan Taylor. I love the running game. I think the Colts all around are a pretty solid offense. I think you have 2 good defenses. So I'm keeping this thing pretty low scoring. If I had to put a cap on it, I'd say somewhere around maybe 24-18 Titans. I think that's kind of where I'm at. I'll lock it on in at under 51, Titans Colts.
all
What
right.
you got for me?
We'll go ahead and lock that one in. Yeah, so I kind of went ahead and was looking to see, all right, what teams do I really like this week? One thing that really stood out to me, and we've talked about this team quite a bit today, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. So Currently, DraftKings has the Cincinnati Bengals at a minus. So let me make sure I get it correct before I tell you guys. We've had some controversy over the spread. So minus 10.5 against the Jets. I'm going to take that all day, and I'm going to tell you why. So the Bengals right now are red hot. They're a really good football team. They are playing great. Burrows is out there doing great things. They got Jamar Chase. Like I said, the offensive line's looking good. Defense is looking good. And they're playing the Jets. And, man, the Jets have had a rough season. So they're already 1-5. But not only that, but they've also lost Zach Wilson. So they will actually start White. So Mike White this week. I don't even know who that was. He played last week. To me, there's no way Cincinnati doesn't win this game by a couple touchdowns. So I'm going to lock it in. Cincinnati minus 10.5, beating the Jets.
Okay. I like it. I like where the Bengals are heading. It should be a pretty easy game against the Jets. So as long as they do, I mean, they would have cleared 10.5 against the Ravens. So to think that they couldn't do that against the Jets, that'd be pretty rough. So I like that, and I like that that's going to be part of. I'm going to start off, and we're going to start by calling this the pitiful parlay. Okay, and we're not going to change the name of it until it's something that is successful. So our pitiful parlay this week is going to have Cincinnati minus 10.5. It's going to have the Titans Colts under at 51. And we'll have our third game. So let's get into it. I'm not exactly sure because this is something we just kind of brought up. And I don't know exactly how we're going to structure making this pick. But for this first week, here's my thought. I'm gonna just kind of jab out some other lines that I like. And then if there are other ones that you like, you can mention those, and then we'll kind of just circle back and decide on one that we want to get in that pitiful parlay. So a couple things. So we both said it. We like Packers plus 6.5. I think that's a solid play. I think you're going to see me play that. I'll probably also play a little Packers money, because I like to see that. And I like plus 240 where they're kind of sitting around. But I don't want to lock that in our pitiful parlay because truth behold, while I think it would be very difficult to see the Cardinals beat the Packers by 7. We do have to keep in mind that the Cardinals are 7-0. They're the best team in the league, arguably, and we can't forget about Week 1. I mean, I'm not saying that the Packers haven't been completely dominant since, but the fact that is possible makes me lean. Maybe we don't go towards Packers plus 6.5. Yep. Although, like I said, I will definitely be playing it. But here's what I'm thinking. Okay. I'm thinking I kind of like, and I think you're going to disagree with this actually, but I kind of like the Seahawks at -3 against the Jags. I'm seeing a little more out of Geno Smith, our West Virginia boy, than I thought. And I think they still have some talent they could, and it's the Jags. Who knows what the heck Urban Myers is doing. But the other one that I personally really like, I like the Cowboys -1.5 against the Vikings.
So I'll be honest with you. I was leaning the opposite in the Jags Seahawks games.
Really?
Yeah, I think there's a chance. I think there's a chance the Jags pull that one out.
Dude, you don't understand, okay? Urban Meyer is not going to have the opportunity to be in London again. All right, this game's in Seattle. He can't do the same things. There's no way he's going to be prepared to take a win. And here's why I like the Seahawks. Just to kind of bring that up, I don't think there's anybody who's covering Metcalf and Lockett on the Jags. So if Geno can throw the ball all right, I think they have a pretty good shot. Now, will Geno throw the ball all right? That's a different question. I think it's also tough because they don't have Chris Carson, who, in my opinion, was a pretty dependable back when he was in there. You could hand it off first down and be comfortable with what you're getting. So, I mean, any reason in particular you see the Jags covering here? What's the thought about them leaving? I don't know if I see that.
So the only thing I'm thinking is they're coming off a win, and like I don't think the Jags are a great football team, and I think Urban Meyer's going to struggle. But they also had a rookie QB starting the season. Yes, they lost to the Texans, which is a winnable game. Yes, they lost to the Broncos, which is a winnable game. But then they turned around and played the Cardinals. They lost to the Cardinals. They lost to the Bengals, which they almost won, which we're sitting here saying is a really good football team. And then they lost to the Titans, which again we're saying is a really good football team. They come back with
Right.
a win against the Dolphins, which is not a great football team. And then
Right.
of course the Seahawks. To be honest with you, I mean I've been picking against them 2 weeks in a
Yeah.
row.
Well,
Now. You
then
know what I mean?
that's
So
honestly that's why I thought I had some hesitation bringing that up because I
yeah,
think both your last two, although I mean I think it has something to say. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out in your favor last week against the Saints, so
I
maybe
agree.
that's something. But that's fine. We'll stay off of that. So, what? I mean, give me your ideas. What are you thinking?
I personally, I love Cowboys. I'm seeing. Let me check right now. Let me look at that line. Sorry, guys. Cowboys. I have Cowboys 2.5 though,
Two
but
and a
I
half.
still love it. All right, so it's by a
Okay,
field goal. I think they
I'll
win
take
this
it.
game.
All
To
right.
me, I would want to lock that in as our third. So if we go ahead and lock that in on this parlay, that's giving us plus 600 odds. So
There
if
you
we
go.
were to put in 25, we're looking to win 178.
There you go. Hey, that'd be a nice little double up. Well, we'd
Way
be
to
more
start
than
out.
doubled up because in order to hit our pitiful parlay, we have to hit our what are we, our lucky locks of the week. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. But like I said, pitiful parlay. So locking in Cincinnati minus 10.5, under on the Titans game at 51, and then Cowboys minus 2.5.
Yep, I like it. Good stuff. All right, man. Well, what do you say we wrap up the show? Again, I appreciate everyone coming out and listening to us goofballs talk for an hour and a half. We keep running a little bit long. We're saying that hey, we're going to cut it off in 45 minutes, and we never do. But hey, if you guys like listening to us, that's good to get. We're good to go with that. So you can find us out on Spotify. And then also check us out on Twitter. So we're trying to get that going. So we're at Be Back Podcast. Go check us out. We want to continue. We've been bouncing ideas on what kind of content we're going to put up there for you guys. I think we had a couple good debates this week, so maybe we can get some polls out there and get some opinions in from our listeners. But I've heard of a couple people this past week that have been listening to us and tell us to keep up what we're doing here. So I'm excited to keep it rolling. But Jack, you want to close us out with anything?
Yeah, no, nothing too crazy. I will say, you mentioned, we keep saying we're gonna go shorter, and we end up keep going longer, but fuck it, turn off the podcast. Don't turn off the podcast, but if it's too long, break it up. All right, sport. I hate to be front about it, but we're just two guys, sitting here, and we're gonna talk, and
Yep.
when we run out of shit to say, we'll turn it off. All right.
Yep. We're just having a good time. So.
But yeah, that's everything. Yeah, it was a good one. I'm excited to see what these locks do, and I'm pumped to watch this game Thursday night.
Yep. Sounds good. I'll see you guys next week.
Deuces.